Hi guys, I'm a bit raspy, I'm afraid. I've just got to nip to the toilet and do a couple of things to set up, but I thought I'd give you a chance to all log on anyway and make sure you got a good connection, because I'm going to be going into a lot more detail about what's going on with Revival Survival. So just bear with me a few minutes, I'll be right back. And that note's there for anybody who's asking where I am. Be with you in a minute. Go. Hi folks, how you doing? You alright? I apologise in advance if I lose my voice quite a lot. I've had a really nasty chest infection all week. I'm rasping quite badly. I've been coughing up all kinds of lung butter and generally not feeling very well for the last 7 days or so. So if I sound like cack or you're struggling to hear me, it's not a sound issue with my phone, it's an issue with my voice. And I look as bad as I feel, so I'm not going to be coming on camera today, I'm afraid, which is probably a blessing to some of you, to be honest. So, anyway, hi, how you doing? Good to see several of you who've jumped on there. Who we got? We got John. How's it going, John? You alright? How you doing, Mike? Yes. Thanks for making light of my accent. Yes, we all know I'm from the Midlands. Paul, how's it going? Steve, thanks for joining us, mate. And yes, Ben, I have washed my hands, but I haven't dried them, so they're still a little bit wet, to be honest. So, anyway, here I am. How's it going, guys? I hope you're all setting up ready and getting prepped for Christmas. I love Christmas, me. And I'm really looking forward to it. I've got to be totally honest, really looking forward to it. I'm one of Christmas's biggest fans. And it's the one time a year where my family seem to put everything to one side and we can all just have a nice time. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a difficult year. And, you know, but there's been some nice things happen, you know. We've had a couple of nice revival events. I know several of you have been to those. I've changed the big face of what I'm doing business-wise. I've cut some people out who don't need to be here no more. I've added some people in who I really do want to associate with now. Been good all round, and one of the best bits is this that we're looking at right now. So might not be much to some of you, but this is a big deal to me. Now I know a lot of you out there are following what's going on with the Next itself. I know a few people are a little bit disappointed about the delays, the continued delays for the system coming out. But you know what? The Next is right around the corner now. And, you know, it's not going to be long before it arrives on our doorstep. So I've got it on good advice that everything's in hand. And I'm sure you've all seen the latest Kickstarter update. And I'm really, really pleased to hear, obviously, that it's now on its way. The final stage is there. And I'm totally psyched for it. I really am. So, you know, in line with that, I mean, we wanted to do this a while back. I didn't do as detailed a video on this as I wanted to do a couple of weeks ago after the revival zapped at the end of November. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail about things now. So, as some of you know, or as some of you may or may not know, obviously I'm not a developer, right? I'm not a developer at all. I've never learned to code. I always wanted to. I was from a generation where we were one of the first generations to have the option at school to do GCSE IT, which was one of the first years. I think in the Midlands we were probably the first class to do it, the first class to be offered it, certainly. And I passed it all with flying colours. My original intention was to go and be a game programmer. That was what I wanted to do, but I could never grasp coding, and I had no one around me, to teach me how to do these things. Life catches up. And then life just takes you in a different direction. It's what I always wanted to do. I'm 38 years old now, and I still love my games more than anyone, and I don't think anybody's more into retro gaming than I am. So I've always wanted to make my own game. So a few years ago, I made my own game. It was tool assisted. Yeah, I'll admit it was a bit of a cheat. However, you still have to do a lot within a tool to still make a game. So I did a bit of a Kickstarter and I made a game, and I ended up using the revival events that obviously I head up as a template for these games. And I made this game back in 2013 this was, and people liked it, people liked what I did, and so people wanted to get in on the game and be in the game and everything. Long story short, it wasn't quite completed, but it's now going to be. Things have changed, and things have changed, and I'm now able in a position where I can finally complete the full PC version. It was made into an arcade game, a full proper arcade machine that we built, and if you've been to a revival event, you will have seen it at every event so far, I think. Well, obviously, I teased this a few months ago. Not everybody realised exactly what was going on with it, and the reason was that the guys who were working on it with me, they're good friends of mine, and they asked not to be named because they're working on other projects, and obviously they're involved in the Next itself, and they didn't want people to think that their attention wasn't where it should be. And they've been doing it, they've been on and off with it, for a good while now, readdressing it, and obviously now the time has come where the games, the big A+ games they're working on for the Next are approaching completion. The Next is nearly here, and they're looking for new IPs. And I said, why don't you give this game a try? And they said it was the perfect type of game to port to the Next. The game was created in an 80s arcade style, using all primary colours, using a low resolution. Originally the arcade was in a vertical screen orientation, and it plays like a maze chase game with certain Gauntlet-esque elements to it. Some people have likened it to Mikey. I liken it to Pac-Man crossed with Gauntlet, crossed with Bomberman. That's the way I design the game, and that's the way I kind of pitch it to people. And it's the perfect type of game that could go on the Next. It's really, we want to demonstrate how capable the Next is of doing what the old Spectrum couldn't. And back in the day, we wanted arcade games to be ported to our home computers, and they just weren't powerful enough to do it. Now, for all intents and purposes, this is a bona fide arcade game. It was created without limitations. So, like, it was done on a PC, and even though it's done in a classic style, there was no limit on palettes. The resolution was set at 256 by 256, but you could have, you know, full MP3 sound. You could have any sound effects you wanted. No limits on sprites, no limits on size of game, no limits on anything really. So I made it in an old style, but I wasn't working to any limitations, and it was all done with a tool. So, you know, it was never going to be a coding challenge or anything that would impress anyone from that side. However, moving over to the next is interesting because we've been able to. I knew it would kind of turn out and look exactly like the arcade game would. However, obviously speaking to people who know what they're doing, and obviously I'm now in a position to reveal who they are properly. I did talk about it briefly on some previous videos, but the guys working on it with me are Michael Ware and Jim Bagley of Rusty Pixels, and also Alan, better known as Space Fractal, is working on the music for me. Like I say, I've mentioned this briefly in a past video, but I'm going to go into it a bit more now. I spoke to Jim about it, I don't know, probably over a year ago now. And I spoke to Mike about it more recently this year. And in a very short space of time, they were able to port the assets from the game into a basic kind of maze chase game, exactly like the arcade game was. And over the last probably 2-3 months now, it's been slowly refined on the side of other projects, and the guys have been able to tweak it and make it much closer to the arcade original in terms of feel and gameplay. And then obviously working it out, you start to see there are a few small challenges that arise which you wouldn't get with game creation normally. Now, I mean, I'm not a coder, but I imagine that as far as game creation goes, I would imagine from speaking to people now that when it comes to learning game creation these days and coding, creating Pac-Man-esque games or Space Invaders type games is pretty much, you know, game design 101, so to speak. So to guys like Jim and Mike who've been coding in the industry for 35 years, you know what I mean? It's nothing to them, I can imagine. I mean, I imagine it's still a challenge, you know. However, kudos to them. They've been able to do it with such speed. I can imagine a lot has gone into it, you know. And very faithfully, you know, obviously they had to lean back on me. I didn't know what my involvement would be with this. I am redoing all the graphics myself. There is quite a lot still needs to be done because when you're moving from the PC to this, there's a massive palette shift. You're going from a full 32-bit palette or whatever you've got on a PC, and even though you might not seem you need it, when you look at things like what we've got going on the screen at the moment, those images were just taken from original digitized images taken off the internet, which obviously it then, you know, shrinks the colour down. It's a lower resolution, but it uses as many colours as it can to still make it look as photorealistic as possible. Obviously, the NeXT can't do that with a limited palette of 256 colours. So, all of these little things I've had to redo, I've had to create. You know, I've got my Photoshop set up here on my PC. I've had to create a 256 colour palette, which is exactly a copy of what palette is available on the NeXT. And I can tell you from game creation, from doing all the graphics on this, that the palette is limited in that, you know, even though you've seen some fantastic things on there, the NeXT does still have its challenges with regards to the type of colours you've got available. Now, the type of colours you've got available, I can tell you now, you've got a limited number of greys, you've got a limited number of browns, and when it comes to like very dark shades of certain colours, you've only got a few to choose from. And it might not be that important in some games because you can design the game around it, but because this game already existed on like another platform, we're trying to work and create a genuine port. So we're trying to make this version look just like the arcade version did. I mean, obviously as well as playing the same and that, but I'll go into that in a minute. So obviously, working to a limited palette, I've had to redraw a lot of the sprites. The backgrounds have had to be shrunk down by about a third just to make sure they fit on the resolution of the next screen. But we've managed to make it work. So how's it going, Chris? You all right, mate? And yeah, Aaron in the credits, of course, mate. This isn't even in the final version. I'm showing this one here because I don't think I've actually showed this one on video yet. This is the version that we ended up putting out at Revival Zapped a couple of weeks ago. At the time, we wanted to get enemy movement and everything implemented for people to play it fully. Sadly, there wasn't enough time to do that, but we had this version out, and this is the version I wanted to show people. The reason I want to show it is because obviously it shows the first clue, obviously, as to who was in it. So as it loads up, we've got the Rusty Pixels logo. You can see there the names behind it. You can see there we've got our game testers. We've got some fool named Aaron Davis on there. I don't know why his name's on there. And we've got a proper title screen. We've now got the high score screen, just like the arcade version was. We've got a few pre-populated things. We've got the scrolling background with all the consoles and everything on there. Yeah, there you go. See, Mike's actually joined the stream with us, guys. So if you've got any proper technical questions, please redirect them to Mike if you can, because Mike will be able to answer them for you. The reason I'm doing these vlogs and the reason I'm showing so many of these updates is because I want to show you as things progress in real time. So, like, you know, I've literally had this latest build today. You know, so you're getting to see just how quick or how slow things move forward, what considerations have to be made, what changes need to be made, and the kind of things that go into the process. And I want to give it to you from my perspective because I'm an amateur, you know. I know nothing about coding. I've never studied design or technology or anything like that. But I have got a creative mind, and, you know, this was something that came out of my brain one dark winter week in October 2013, and it's kind of blossomed into this game that I just really want to get out and get finished now. And I'm quite proud of what I've done because the people who play it seem to really enjoy it. So, you know, it was nice when Jim and Mike, you know, obviously friends of mine, have offered to kind of put one of my games onto a system that I've got a lot of love for. And this is what I think the next should all be about, and this is why I'm so psyched about it, and this is why I'm really trying to push it, because the original Spectrum was a system that captured people's imaginations and captured the heart of the bedroom coder, because it was the first time really that it was an affordable thing for Joe Average to take home and learn how to code and have a real chance of putting their games out there. You know, the Commodore was the more powerful thing, but you needed more money to have it. Nobody really had PCs, you know, only rich bastards had the Apple. And, you know, it's like the Spectrum was the first accessible system for many, and the Spectrum Next is very much representing a big portion of that. It's not just about the games, it's about the spirit of the Spectrum. It sounds like a cliche, but I can see now. I mean, I'm 38 years old, right, and I've got my own life and I do my own thing. But I can see and I can feel in the Next exactly what has been talked about for the last 2 years. Well, 3 years now, I would imagine it's going on for. As to what the Spectrum Next is, and I really want to convey this to people because, I really want to convey this to people because I'm an amateur and I've got an aspiration to get one of my games out there, and to have one of my games on a system that's just coming out, that's new, and to work with people who I grew up playing their games. It's a big deal to me, and it's really good that they're listening so intently on what I'm saying about the game creation, about, you know, the things they think may not be necessary, but I say, well, that's, you know, that is exactly what I think the game should have. You know, everything I designed in the original game, even though it was incomplete, it wasn't an accident. It was intentional. You know, the way certain things work. We had a discussion very early on about character movement, about the way that the sprite moves and the way the sprite tracks on screen, the way using the controls is different to the way you would imagine a maze chase game to be. And it was designed specifically to be that way because I want it to feel like a more modern, more accessible game. The number of hit points the character has, the speeds all the enemies move at, it was very particularly done. None of it was an accident, and I'm now trying to convey, move that over to the next. And even though they've got to do the coding on it, I don't know how difficult or how easy a lot of those parts are, but they are trying to do everything that I'm asking for. You are having to redesign the game somewhat because you work into a smaller screen. You want a game that's got a little bit more length to it and got a little bit more replay value to it. And that's what we're trying to do with this. We've already made some decisions which are going to change it slightly from the arcade, but not change it so much that it can't be considered a direct port. As I'd already mentioned, we've had to shrink some of the stages down to make them fit onto this screen. Now, by doing that, some of the stages had like multiple elements on one stage or multiple rooms. What we're going to do is we're going to fragment those, and rather than just discard big areas that I designed, I'm going to elaborate on those, and we're actually going to pad out the stages by splitting certain areas up to add in more stages. So rather than just 9 stages like the arcade original was, 9 stages plus a final boss stage, we're going to be padding this one out and hopefully have double that amount for the home version. So it will still have the pace and the speed and the feel of an arcade game, but you're going to get a little bit more for it. There's going to be a little bit more gameplay to it, and we're actually redefining the challenge on there, so it's a little bit more difficult to get through. Because when you're sat at home with your next computer at home, much like the way they used to simplify arcade games when they came home, to not have that arcade rip-off factor where they were just taking your 10p's and your 20p's back in the day. Whenever it came home, they gave you more credits, they made the game easier. We're not making it easier, it's actually being made a little bit more of a challenge, so it's going to take you longer to get through it. Whereas, when you're playing the arcade game at the events, you want to be able to blast through it in 30 minutes because you need to go off and do other things at the event. So we're making the same considerations you would have had to have made porting an arcade game back in the day. We're just going about it in a completely different way, with less people, and being done very much in spare time for some of us. So yeah, I just thought I'd communicate a bit of that to you, because it's these, whether you've liked what you've seen of this so far or not, or whether you know a bit of the history of the projects or not, I just want to kind of relay that to you and show you that this isn't just something that's just been knocked up, with no consideration. This is something that's been thought about, and it's something that the more we go into it, the more detailed it's becoming. So, just reading back down. How's it going, Bill, mate? Nice to see you on there. Hey, Alan, thanks for joining us. Nice to see you guys and asking some technical questions, guys. And yeah, get me a zinger as well, Dave. Yeah, exactly, Mike. That's exactly what I'm talking about, yeah. Right, okay, so anyway, getting onto the game itself, this is the version we had out at Revival a few weeks ago. Now I'm just going to, I won't turn the volume up too much at this point, I'll show you in the final version, but you can see we've got a proper title screen, we've got the high score thing, we've got a scrolling background. Unlike the arcade game where it scrolls diagonally, apparently that was going to be a little bit too clunky in the animation, so we've made it scroll horizontal because it looks a lot better on the next. We've had to remove some of those, but all of these here I've had to redraw from scratch because the level of detail in them is quite high, and if you look on close inspection, they're probably a little bit rough around the edges, if you know what I mean. But with less colours to pick from, I've had to more carefully select the elements I've used on the background there, and they're just about passable to be a scrolling background thing rather than super detailed. I've done a decent job with the Game Boy, the SNES, the Dreamcast, but then there's other things like the joypads where it's been a lot harder to kind of redraw that. I may touch those up at a later date, but it looks passable for now. So, but anyway, yeah, we've got the game. So it's set up for Kempston joystick, and that's what we had running at the event. and press fire to start. We go into the game. We've now got the proper level 1 background music, well, I'll show you that in the final build in a minute. But the versions I've been showing you so far, the graphics hadn't been fully redone in the Spectrum palette, the Spectrum Next palette. So the problem we had was there were certain characters down the front here. We've got my brother and his wife. The skin tones didn't look quite right. And even though they are completely different colours from the arcade version now, the skin tones have got the same kind of contrast between them as they do on the arcade version. I'll call up the arcade version on the PC in a minute, just to show you. You might not pick up too well on camera, but those are the kind of things that I've done. The stage background colours, you know, the colour of the wallpaper on the walls, it's all been touched up to match the Spectrum Next palettes. So even though it looks slightly different from the arcade, the contrast between them is identical. So on face value, it does look like the arcade version. There's other things I've had to do because it just looked messy. The carpets on which the arcade games stand around the edges there, there was texture on those carpets on the arcade originally, but because of the limited number of colours available, when I tried to redo the texture on those carpets, it looked kind of messy, so I decided to leave that out. There's something else you'll notice once I start playing the final version in a minute anyway, is that level 1, although it looks passable and acceptable, when I originally designed it to look basic. That was intentional. I did that because as you further go into the game, each stage becomes more detailed. There's more and more detail crammed into this low resolution. So whereas the arcades look very basic on this stage, the tables look basic, and you know the freedom of space that you're walking around looks big and open. As you move into the game, that becomes more detailed. That wasn't an accident, and it's not an oversight. It was done intentionally to start you off with a basic looking game and then give it the appearance of more depth the further you move into it. Now on this version, all the character can do is walk and shoot. The shooting's been implemented. There's a limit to the number of bullets you can have on screen at any one time. I think it's 3 on screen at any one time. And we are working to limit on the number of sprites per line at this point. Now, in the latest Next update, from what I've seen about the firmware, the sprites per line has been massively increased in the latest firmware version. So even though those constraints existed, we're going to continue to work to that because that's how we started the game. But it does allow us a little bit of ambiguity. Now, that's exactly what I did with the arcade/PC version. It was designed to look like it was made to constraints, but those constraints weren't really there. So, you know, we will try and limit the number of sprites on screen, even though we could probably now have dozens of animated characters in the background and a lot more collectibles. We're not going to increase that because the game was designed to be an obvious port and to stay in the arcade style without, you know, pushing the boundaries. It's got to look like the arcade version does. So yeah, in this version you can now shoot the enemies. The enemies have got hit boxes and the detection's pretty much bang on. They've got their own animations. They've got standard animation for dying, which is like a little explosion. There's several collectibles been put in place. The background sprites have been recoloured properly. We had problems with the skin tone on this fella here. They've now all been corrected. We've now got, like I say, nicely animated people in the background. The on and off screen walking is properly implemented now. The speed of the character has been set slightly lower than the arcade version. That's intentional because you're working with a smaller screen. You don't want it, so you're running around at quite the pace of the arcade, because you've got a smaller screen, you get around it a lot faster. We'll probably actually limit the time limit as well, a little bit less than the arcade, because you've got a smaller screen to work to. We've slowed the character down a notch or two to make the pace feel a lot more fitting for this screen size. But you'll see in a second, you can actually complete the stage. Destroyed all the enemies. We'll grab the last couple of collectibles. Breakable banners are in place. Those are there to teach you that obviously later on there are more breakable objects you need to hunt down on each stage. That's something else that increases as you go on, the number of breakable objects and paths you can find. But there, we collect the last object and the level completes. And you can see that was the message you would get if you played this at Revival a couple of weeks ago. You can also now implement your input your name onto the high score table. You can do it using the keyboard, or you can do it using your joystick or whatever controls you've chosen on this table. So it is still arcade style, which is nice. And it does save those there. When it goes into the high score table in a minute, you'll see it. Now, there is, coming on to that in a second, John. Yeah, Bill, I originally did make this, mate. If you watch the video back, mate, honestly, you'll get a lot of insight into this. This game I originally designed and did myself, but my esteemed colleagues at Rusty Pixels are handing this port to the next. But I am still doing all the graphics for it. I did every pixel on this myself from the start, and I'm doing it again for the next. And we've got Alan on board as well now, doing the music properly, and he's doing a brilliant job of converting the MP3 music into AY for the Spectrum Next port. Yeah, there's going to, yeah, any game that's got 2-player mode, extra sprites per line will happen. I'm going to mention it now briefly. There are some plans about adding, I did mention this to people at the event, we are thinking about adding a 2-player mode to this. So not only will it be quite an exciting arcade blast, but to give it a bit more depth, we are talking now about, once we've completed the main game, putting in a 2-player mode, which at the moment is conceptually is going to be something of a high score run with competitive elements. So you'll be able to pick a number of different players. So there'll be different people to play as besides just me. Probably other members of the team will be getting in as selectable characters. And you will each have to destroy enemies as they rush at you. And you'll probably be able to tag each other to lower each other's points, or get hits to return them back to their starting square, or something like that. We're going to work all that out in detail, but there aren't many 2-player next games yet, especially simultaneous ones, and I think it'd be cool to have some kind of deathmatch situation going on. It should play a little bit like Bomberman. If you were to mix Bomberman single-player mode and multiplayer mode, think along those lines. That's the kind of the angle we're going for if we do a 2-player mode for this. Would be really cool. It'll be competitive, John. I think that'll be the best way to do it. Paul, yes, you are, mate. You're not actually in this version because you're what's called a special enemy. Special enemies, we haven't. The enemy movement has only recently been done, so special enemy movement's a little bit more tricky to do. So the special enemies will be coded a bit later on once we've got the first few levels in place. But yeah, you're one of the special enemies, and you will appear pretty early on, just as you do in the arcade version. But yeah, you're very much still in it, along with a load of new enemies, new people in the backgrounds. So anyway, this is the version we had out a few weeks ago, and there's a couple of bugs you're going to notice straight away. When I originally showed some screenshots of this, you'll notice that there was a life counter at the bottom, and at the top of the screen there was also text above where you can see the scores. There was a bit of a bug when Mike compiled this version, and for some reason they're cut off on real hardware. But thankfully, we've now got a new update of this, so I'm just going to quickly reset it. And we're going to go down, and we'll go to the latest build of this. But first thing I need to do, you have to delete the save file when you load a new version of it, otherwise it doesn't boot properly. So you can see there's been several builds of this now. We've got Revival Survival 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the latest version we got on here, of course, is 9. So we're going to fire that up now. I'll turn the volume up slightly so you can hear everything. But I can tell you that we've now got stereo sound for the music and mono sound for the sound effects in place, which will fit in nicely with the new firmware announcement that's just been made. You can see the credits have been updated with Alan's full name there. I do apologise because it's always a name I forget. I'm sorry, Alan. It's quite a complex, long name for me. But yeah, you can see now, this is the very latest build. We've got the proper title screen music. We've got the high score screens and everything in. We've now got the lives counter on the bottom of the screen, just like we have on the arcade. You can now see at the top of the screen, we've got player written above your current score. We've got the time written above the time, and high score up in the top right hand corner there, in the same text colours as you would have had on the arcade. What's quite nice about this is that because those are utilising, see, there's little tricks being implemented in this all round. Those are actually using the sprite allocation that you can dump in the border area. That you can dump into the border area, and the reason that's handy is because those things are pretty much non-functional as far as the game goes, so you wouldn't really want to take them up with, you know, invading on the usable screen space. So something as simple as text, even though you're using sprites to create that text in the border area, it does mean you can reserve the full 256 by 192 resolution for the game itself. So it means we haven't had to sacrifice any more screen space than we actually needed to. It also makes the screen look a lot more full, because you'd be forgiven for thinking that there's no border on this. I mean, this is a widescreen TV, and obviously the only borders you can physically see are at the right and left hand sides. That's obviously because the title screen is black, and then obviously when you see the scrolling screen there, you can see the images moving, but you've still got things written to the very top of the screen and the very bottom of the screen. So it just looks like a 4:3 aspect arcade game that's been restricted within the confines of a 16:9 TV. So works perfectly well. So yeah, so we've got those things put in. The credit screen has been tidied up. The new sound's been put in. And something I wanted to talk about is this. And what it is, we're still trying to work out a way, or the best way, of implementing the arcade control scheme. Now, the arcade controls are up, down, left, right, but you've got a shoot and you've also got a jump button. That's what kind of takes what would be a two-dimensional maze chase game into the third dimension, really, because, you know, you're not kind of locked down to a plane or a certain grid like you are with Bomberman. You're able to kind of leave that, and you get this illusion of depth as you pass in front of and around the scenery and the characters that are in it. And having the jump there really kind of makes it pop. Now, obviously standard, you know, Spectrum joysticks and that, you're limited to your 4 directions and a single fire button, even when you've got multiple buttons on one joystick. I mean, yeah, you can say I'll play it on a keyboard, but at the end of the day, this is an arcade game. Really, the way it should be played is with a joystick. So we're still looking at some options with that. Now, I've been talking to, his name's just suddenly escaped me. I'm sorry about this if you're watching, but the guy who's been making the peripherals for the Spectrum Next up to this point, he's been making custom joypads. He's been offering the SD expanders and things like that. You know, the extra ports, the external ports and things like that. I've had a word with him, and I'm going to be taking a look at some of his joypads, because I'm thinking about making like a custom arcade controller, because that's obviously what I do. And I'm going to be making a custom arcade controller for the Next using that, and using our game as a template for it, because if you're going to want to play an arcade port, if you can then play it with as arcade-like, you know, controls as possible, then I think that's a really cool thing to have at home. Excuse me, let me just have a quick drink, guys. Chest infection's pretty bad and I don't want to go into a coughing fit. Get a bit of dry mouth. So, for the time being, the jumping has now been added, but thanks to the addition of Mega Drive controllers kind of being one of the control options you can set up with your Next, we now have a 2-button system implemented on Mega Drive controllers. So, I mean, this is the aftermarket Mega Drive pad, the Competition Pro, but it's as good as the Mega Drive pads. And you got your up, down, left, right on your D-pad, and then B is fire, and C's jump. So pretty much like you would have had on a lot of platforming games for the Mega Drive back in the day. So this is kind of making it feel a lot more like a console game, you know, and for someone of my generation who obviously moved into consoles as time went on, that feels quite natural. And for a game of this style, it does kind of bring it out of the 80s and more into the 90s, if you know what I mean. And I think that's a good thing. Now, what we're going to try and work out is a way, hopefully, at some point, of replicating that and creating some way of doing maybe a double tap system with a button and holding the button down, so you can use a single button Kempston joystick to still have both controls available in game. But it may be that you need to have maybe tap the space bar to jump and have kind of a Kempston joystick thing plus space bar as like a dual control thing for playing the game, and then obviously having keyboard as your kind of third option, if you know what I mean. But the default for now is going to be using the Mega Drive pad, and hopefully when I do get some samples of those Sinclair joypads that are being made, I'm going to see about I'm going to be reviewing those as well, and I'm going to try and design the game around those pads. And if they work the way I think they do, I'm probably going to be making a custom Revival Survival arcade joystick that hopefully we can you know, replicate. Oh, Mike's just informed me there, guys. I didn't realise that start on the joypad has been put in as a pause button, which is really nice to know, because if I want to talk about finer points, I can now stop the game. So, you know, we're making full use of this joypad here. Hi, Jim. Thanks for joining us as well, mate. So, yeah, this is the latest version. I've got to be honest, I've not seen that much of this so far, but I do know it does have the proper stage music in. We now have proper enemy movement, and I can tell you from the first couple of gameplay tries, it's quite tough compared to the arcade version. So, maybe it's just because I'm not used to playing on a joypad, I'm not sure, but we're going to get into it now, and you're going to see it with jump implemented for the first time. The enemies all moving at probably the correct speeds, the hitboxes and everything in, and I think the first 3 levels are actually there. So for the first time on the next, you're going to see, if I can beat the first stage, you're going to see more than just the same original stage. So here we go. We've now got intros in as well. They're moving a bit fast at the moment, so you might not have time to read that, but the arcade intro is there. Might need to revise some of the text, maybe shorten it down a bit. You've now got the instructions on how to play put in, just like the arcade. You've now got intros to each stage as well. So let's just test that. Yes, start does indeed pause the game. So you can see now we've now got enemies spawning from the corners. You start in the centre. And as you destroy those enemies, they will respawn in the centre. So it's a good idea to get moving straight away. But you can see we've got all the elements on screen now. We've got the high score text, the player text and the lives on screen. So we can now play this just like the arcade version. So let's see if I can get through and defeat the first stage. And trust me, having auto fire does you no favours. I can tell you that for nothing, because I've tried to beat this a couple of times on the few playthroughs I've had and failed. And there you go, I've just been fragged by the barrel there, so that's not a great start. Frogs after me. Let's grab those games while there's no one at this top end of the screen. Oh, they're in pursuit. Now, it might not seem it, but each of the enemies does have different behaviour. It's not fully locked in at the moment, but they do all have their own chase pattern. So some will pursue you at every corner, some will pursue you at every other corner. Some can go off screen, some can't go off screen. You'll have to learn as you go into the game just which ones do which. Now, I didn't show you the jumping just up because I was talking, but yes, jumping is definitely there. You can't control jumping like you can on the arcade version yet. We may leave that as it is, we may not, we'll have to see. But you can see that the hitbox is definitely correct for the barrel, because your shots can go underneath it and you can quite easily get tagged by that. That's one of the more tricky enemies on screen. The breakables are there and the collectibles are hidden inside the banners on stage 1. Run away! Don't want to get pincered there. I thought I was going to have the frog on one side of the screen. I'll get that ghost while I can. Die. So even with a slower pace, it's still quite a fast-paced game. You've got to think on your feet. The level layouts to start with are quite open, so it's quite easy to escape from a track and enemy because you're running on quite an open kind of street-like grid, if you know what I mean. The later you go into it, the number of paths available to you is severely limited. So it's quite difficult to run away from certain enemies if you're not thinking fast. Now, I've collected all that's on screen, and I do know that certain enemies you've got to be able to collect the collectibles inside them to complete it, and there we go, I've got the last one. So for the first time, here's level 2. And you can see the level 2 of the arcade game has been successfully ported now onto the next, along with the appropriate music for this stage. Some of the elements on screen, anybody who's ever seen level 2 of the arcade game will know, this is where people first get stumped on the arcade, because there's one collectible you have to get, and it's very tricky to get if you don't know where it is. You can see the first special enemy there is on screen, known as the Plum Warrior. Hasn't been properly recoloured yet, and his animation isn't quite there, but he's definitely there and working, and that's as far as I can get. But you can now put your name in on this as well. Right, I've talked a little bit about it, so the next one I'm just going to try and give it a quick playthrough and see if I can make it onto that stage and pause it, and then I can talk about a few more of the little nuances on there. And I am trying to listen to what you're saying here, guys, but obviously I'm into my game. Yeah, it is possible to complete the game without jumping, guys. So you could play with the Kempson joystick even without jumping available. Jumping was put in as a kind of an escape tactic. So if you're good enough, if you want to set yourself a challenge, try playing it without the jump feature implemented. Yeah, as we move on, Paul, some of the enemies will actually have projectiles as well, so that will add into some of the challenge as well in the later stages. Oh, thanks for that, Mike, yeah. Bear in mind, this is the first time I've played on here. The arcade version I can complete every time. If I've got problems with my gameplay, I'm going to blame it on Jim. Jim's been responsible for a lot of the enemy movement, so if he's made it too hard or he's made my character move crap, it's Jim's fault. Right, so let's give it a proper play this time. So let's skip past all this and let's give it a proper play, right? Try and trick them into taking a different path. Yep, that's what we like to see. Damn it, that was a bad mistake to make. Trying to rush it now, you know. Die. I've just got to get the barrel now, you know. It's the last enemy that's got an item in, I think. Come back. When you want it to chase you, it runs away from you. Can't know that. Gotcha. There we go. Now who's bad at the game, Mike? Oh yeah, cheers, Mike. Right, so level 2. I'll quickly pause it just to discuss a few more things. There's a few more characters been added in and taken out. If you're watching, Mike James, I know you like your Spectrum stuff. Retro Gaming Roundup, we've got Mike James and Scott on there, with the second Mike now taken out because he's no longer there. One of the stalls that was at the front has now been changed and updated, so the Centre for Computing History now has a larger stand on here. Big Vinny, our security man, is there, standing over to the side. We've got Andy Spencer there from r.a.m. with him representing his museum, and everybody's favourites Max and Jackie. They've now been moved from the centre pitch at the Commodore 16 to over here. And if you look very closely, you'll see the little touches that I've done. Max, I've updated your hair, mate. So the ponytail is gone, just like it is in today. And like I say, we've now got special enemies. We've got the Plum Warrior there chasing you around. He's usually got a bit of a bounce to him that will probably be added in later on. But there are some trick little parts here. The centre section here, if I can get to it, isn't live on this one. On the arcade version, if you run in too fast here, you run into live wires there, and the live wires kill you. So you have to be very careful to destroy this last barrier. Anybody who's played the arcade game and wondering how to beat this level, that is the very last one you should go for, because once you've cleared the screen of enemies, there's less to chase you into that zone. So let's see if I can beat this and make it to level 3. You'll notice a few new collectibles on this stage. We've got the SNES games in, we've got the Game Boy games in, and we've also got NES games, but they're not on this stage yet. We've added in some new collectibles for the stage 3. Oh! It's looking a bit leery. I got tagged there by the barrel. Oh, die! This is already a little bit harder because that's on such a smaller space, and with your character moving that little bit slower, does make it a bit more difficult to get to them. And I still got tagged there. Right, I can do this. I can do this. You can probably just about hear the music there. I've only got it turned down a bit because I'm straining my voice as it is. Alan's done a great job on the music. I like the music. It's good to have a nice fast beat music to kind of keep your heart rate up. Oh! You can already see the tighter corridors on here causing me some problems. There's less escape routes in that top right hand corner, so it's not a safe place to be. You also got to keep track of what enemies you're destroying, because you've got to destroy all of them at least once to get the game that's inside them, else you can't complete the level. So you got to keep track of which one you've killed, so you don't end up trying to chase the wrong one round at the end. I'll get that while I got a chance. Oh no! Oh man! See, that's what I mean. You get a proper trap there. I really should have gone for that last. I was being too brave with that. Right, I'm using auto fire. I'm copping out. Oh, I'm gonna get. Oh, I'm getting cornered at the top here. I'll find a way down. Right, got the barrel. Got the Plum Warrior. Oh, goes way fast, man. Oh, I've only got 20 seconds. I'm gonna lose this life as well, unless I can get that last one. Yes, just about. Woo! And now we're on to the arcade. Oh, excellent. We've got some new music in. And Paul, if you're still on, mate, I did want to save it as a surprise, but there you are. I told you were still in it. I've got to work on your sprite and give you some up and down animations. I still haven't got the up animation sorted. We've got new music in for stage 3. The upper right hand corner has been amended. We now have Mr. Andy Palmer there from Arcade Club on, representing his place with his own little pitch. We've got the Turnarcades arcade stand in the centre, like normal, with a couple of guys playing on machines there. And we've got Pete Smets there from over in Belgium, representing Rastamania. We've got the VR machine down the bottom there. I'll tell you what, recolouring that, I was talking about the limited palettes, recolouring that VR machine with a limited number of greys was extremely difficult to do. and still make it convincing. So, but I've managed to do it just about. And you'll notice the enemy count on this screen is starting to go up, whilst the number of avenues available has gone down. It's really cool. I do like it. Alan, this is the first time I've heard this tune. And anybody who's played the arcade game will also notice a few changes. The collectibles for this stage, rather than being cartridges or discs, are actually arcade boards, which is perfectly fitting for the stage. So you can see the green thing there is like a standard jammer PCB. You can even see the edge connector on the bottom edge. We've got these little black cartridges, which obviously anybody who's a big fan of the big reds will know that's a Neo Geo cartridge. That's why they're so huge. And that blue kind of vertical thing there, a few of you could probably guess, but that's actually a CPS2 cartridge. I'll turn the music up now, Mike, while I attempt to play this level, because I know I'm going to lose. Whoa! Forgot about the faster barrels on this stage. Run away! Right, I've really got to be on my toes. I think we need to reduce the enemy count slightly on this one, fellas. It's really friggin' hard. Woo! Stupid. Jesus Christ. Yeah, the difficulty will definitely grade up, but you've got to bear in mind, Benny, that's only level 3. If there's going to be close to 20 stages altogether, we've got to control the difficulty a bit more. The arcade difficulty does ramp up, but it tends to be, because you've got a bigger screen, it's easy to control the number of sprites on screen. At the moment as well, the way the enemies respawn on this, they respawn the same type of enemy. On the arcade version, there's only actually one special enemy per stage. When a special enemy is killed, like a barrel or the character ones, when they respawn as standard characters, which kind of controls the difficulty as well. But I'm loving it. Tell you what though, I've got a high score in 6 figures, so I'm quite happy about that. That should firmly place me at the top of the high score table now. There we go, look at that. 113,000, 42,000, yeah, quite happy with that. So, but you know what, I'm going to give it another go, and then I'm going to show people what goes into the development of this anyway. Oh, sorry dog. Just going to quickly let my dog out, guys, be back with you in a second. Come on. Ollie. Come. Come on, quick. I'll have a quick drink as well, because my voice is going. But you can see now it's starting to become quite a fast-paced game. I just want to say thanks to all of you so far. I want to say thanks to Mike and Jim anyway for putting the effort in on this, and to Alan for the music. It's looking exactly the way I wanted it to look. It sounds the way I wanted it to sound. Just wish this TV would work properly. And I want to thank you all for your input as well, because people have been commenting on it at the events. You know, people who played the game before, even the standard arcade version. Your input is very helpful. And I'm trying to create a game like I create the events, with as much user input as possible. Yeah. The original music, Benny. The original music is by an artist called Whiteley. The first couple of years we did the revival events, we had some chiptune artists come in. Now, he used to do mixing on live on Game Boys. and he does some brilliant tunes online now. He gave me permission to use anything from his library basically for the game several years ago, and I am now properly cutting it to put it into the proper arcade version, because I never implemented that, which is why no one's ever heard it. I've always had it back here, but I've never implemented it. So the first people are hearing of some of these tunes are obviously, I've handed them over to Alan, who's converting them to AY. The music you hear on the title screen is from, I think it's the title track on his album Decimated, I believe. And then the first 2 stages are tunes from that album. And as you go further in, some of my more favourite tunes from that are in there. But because obviously there's going to be more stages on here, Alan is mixing them. So like they're not carbon copies of the originals that you see on the arcade, so that you hear on the arcade, but they are remixes, and he's also creating some original tunes for the extra stages we've got going on here, in the style of those. You know, I gave him a brief on the type of music I want the game to have. I wanted the game to have fast-paced music. I wanted it to be kind of bassy. Well, even though it's not bassy, because obviously it's in, you know, chiptune. I wanted it to sound like, you know, fast-paced kind of dance music. So it kind of pumps you up as you're playing the game. That was important, especially because we've slowed down the characters a touch from the arcade version. I think it's important that you keep the kind of the franticness of the game up, if that's a word. That's what I really want to maintain, because that's what kind of keeps you going. And as you can see, it's quite tricky. I mean, I've got to be honest, I'm not making excuses now. Everyone knows my left hand doesn't work too well, and I'm great with an arcade joystick, but on a D-pad, my thumb doesn't work very well. So playing on a D-pad's quite hard for me. That's also part of the reason I want to build a custom joystick for this, because for people like me who've got limited mobility, it should make handling it a little bit better. So I'll definitely be doing that at some point. But I'm going to give this another quick whirl, and I'm going to shut my trap so you can just enjoy the game, and let's see if I can do better on a second try through. I'd like to beat level 3 if I can, but man, that level 3 is really hard. Oh, Jim just said he's made the controls even more user-friendly. There's a new update. Oh, he's been updating the controls while on the train. No way. If you've sent it to me, Jim, I've got my PC open. But I'll tell you what, honestly, guys, this is looking really good. I'm quite happy about this. Yes, Michael, I just got your message, mate. Sorry, yeah, I intentionally showed the older version. That was all it was. Yeah, so let's give this another quick whirl then. Let's see how well we do. In fact, I might change up in a minute and try and do it with the joystick, without the jump, and see what it's like. But let's give this another bash. You can see when you go back to level 1 just how much the difficulty does increase up to level 3. There's a lot more enemies going on in level 3. Yeah, I think the collision needs to be slightly fine-tuned for to account for the jumping with some of the characters, or the jump itself needs to be fine-tuned to account for the slower speed, maybe. We'll work that out, guys, I'm sure. But this looks so much better since I've recoloured, you know, the entire screen for the next palette. It just looks and feels so much better. A couple of people had said, like, you know, have I got any concerns about using, you know, such bold colours for a game? You know, is it a bit too kiddish? Is it too, you know, is it too old-fashioned maybe? Does it look too amateurish? But I think it really fits the type of game that I've made. And a lot of people have said, you know, it makes it fun. It makes the whole game look fun and appealing, you know. The enemy destruction animation will look slightly different eventually. I just haven't got around to drawing that just yet. But the animation for the shooting is just like the arcade, the way I want it. The characters are all animating with the right number of frames. A lot of the background sprites that I wanted in, people I wanted to appear in the background are there. Obviously, all the production crew will be making their way in, so all the current Revival Retro Events staff will be in here. Some of the old crew removed. Some of them have already been removed. The guys involved in the production of the game, Jim, Mike, Alan, you will all be in here. You're not escaping that easily. I know Jim's already got his own game, but he's got to appear in this one at somewhere. He's easy to spot. Just look for the guy who looks a bit like Jeebus. But yeah, I mean, stellar job so far, guys. I'm really happy with what you've done. I know some of you keep asking me, like, you doing me a favour, I mean, you really are doing me a favour, but whatever work you guys do on this, I'm really happy with what I'm seeing. You're seeing exactly what I see, and you're seeing merit in what I created, and I'm really glad that I've made something that's worthy of you putting your time and effort into it. I'm glad you see some value in the game that I made to be able to do this and to want to do this. And I mean, I don't know what the rest of you guys are thinking. I mean, I've heard a few comments about this at shows and things like that, but I don't know how what the rest of you think. So I mean, please leave your comments, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching it back. Please leave me some comments as to what you think of the game. I mean, drop your suggestions in. I mean, I'll be honest, it'll be difficult to implement certain things because we're trying to make this a port of the arcade game. So we're sticking to that design, if you know what I mean. But if there's any way, like I say, we're on about implementing a 2-player mode. We're on about extending the number of levels. If there's any kind of stage elements you might want to see or suggestions for levels or something like that, then please mention them because I'd like your input and it'd be nice to do something a bit fresh, Oh, that was stupid. I've got to get that one in the middle, man. I can see a problem there. You have to push up to do that, and as I'm pushing up to shoot that, it's trying to move me around the corner. So it's hard to shoot. I have to keep pressing up then left to go back into the spot, if you know what I mean. I have to work on that bit there. I might redesign the grid slightly for that bit. I wonder why I was having problems with that bit. Makes sense now. I'll describe that to you guys, if you're still watching, by the way, Jim and Mike. I'll describe that to you in a few messages, and we'll see if we can tidy that bit up a bit. But it's playing nice. I mean, it's genuinely fun to play. I'm getting my ass kicked, but it's genuinely fun to play. Right, let's skip that. I just want to go for another go. Come on, right. Right, one more go. Deathmatch! Can I put your shed in? In fact, Aaron, you know what? I think you're already in the car park, mate. Level 4's not there yet, but there is a shed in the car park. Maybe I can tag it up as Aaron's shed. Whoa! Right, let's get this right. Let's fucking do this. I'm determined now because I can pace the arcade version, and I'm hating it that I'm getting my ass kicked by my own game. So it's time to step it up a bit now. Right. If you could see the way my thumb's mashing at this control pad, you'd understand my battles. But you'll all get a chance eventually, hopefully. Get out of it. Die. Yep, there we go. Level 1 on 1 life. That's what we like to see. Why is my score so high already? Oh, it's because of the amount of time I had left, I'm guessing. We'll adjust all the scoring in that last thing to make it more palatable for people. Whoa. Right, now I know how to get that centre section. This should be easy. Easier. Not easy, but easier. Goodbye. Goodbye. Give me that. Give me that. Giz it, as Aaron would say. Piss off. Piss off. Oh, there's still an enemy I haven't killed. Which one is it? Oh, is it one of the barrels? Oh, crap. Oh, one of the ghosts, definitely. And that frog. You know if you've already killed them because you'll see if they drop an item or not. Oh, crap. I mean, that was the last one there as well. Right, okay. Let's think about this. Ah, I've got a system. I've got a system. Right. What the hell was that? Don't know how to tap that. Oh, shit. I wasn't paying attention. See, that's where it differs from the arcade version. The special enemies can't cross the screen boundaries. Only the basic enemies can do that. Get you bastards this time. Whoa. Stupid, stupid. Piss off. Just a barrel to get. Stay down here, I've got more escape routes. So the barrel will make it down here. They're trapping me. Ah, it was him. One life. No way, I'm going to do this on one life. Run away. Run away, run away fast. Alright, let's get all the obvious ones first. And not get trapped in Andy's arcade club there. Yeah, it's a nice little trap alley I created there. I regret that now. That wasn't there on the original. Oh, big barrels. Scary barrels. Oh. No, Paul chasing me now as well. God. This is going to end badly. On my last life, I'm definitely going to die. How the hell? This is just mental. Oh, shit. Shit on a stick. Oh well. Top of the board. I'm top of the scoreboard in my own arcade, that's all that matters. I'm gonna beat that. I'm gonna beat that just to show you it can be done. Oh, we've got a reset going on. Okay. Just spotted a bug there, guys. Might want to check on that. Anyway, we'll reset it. And we're back in action. Yeah, found a bug there, Alan, by the look of it. Well, the developer deathmatch. Well, there's hopefully going to be some kind of deathmatch in this, at least. Right, I'm just reading your comments here, Benny. I thought it captured the arcade game and the feel really well. Sacrifice you've had to make to condense the screen doesn't take anything away from the actual gameplay experience. Thanks for your comments, Benny. I appreciate that. No level skip feature for testing. I think the guys were going to put that in. I don't know if they have. They have done. They haven't told me if they have. Baggers does revival. Nah, Jim. If you're going to appear, you're going to appear as yourself for definite. Baggers does revival. You're going to be doing your normal thing. Jim should be an Easter egg in everything. Everything next. Yeah. You know what? That'd be quite funny, actually. Having him appearing everywhere. It's peering over walls. Yeah. Oh, Alan, you're going to look cool in the game, trust me. Yes, mate, I am. Aaron, yes, I am meeting you, mate. I'll message you in a second. I hadn't done it because I was just setting up my live stream, mate. It controls better now, Benny, definitely, to what it did at the event. But yeah, it's starting to feel a lot more like the arcade version now. Ah, right, so we got here we go. Here we go. Here's the new version, the new control update. So, you know what? I might as well do this live for you then, guys. I was going to show you some actual development, but Mike's just told me there's a slight update which Jim has done on the train. So here's about that for proper live streaming. Jim's been doing some development live. So we're just going to flick over to the PC here. And Mike has sent me an update file. So, shrink that off. And he's just sent me an update file. So, we're going to download that. And minimize that. And what we will now do is we will add that version on. And this will be build 10 now. That's on here. And we will put this one with the fixed controls onto here. And we'll see what difference that makes. So, let's just find it. There it is. Alright, and we'll move that over to memory card. Version 10. And we will now move back to our next and we'll see if Jim's control fix has improved things slightly. So, I mean, anybody who's not seen like the operation of a Next and how swift you can do things, this is kind of an eye-opener from pissing about with tapes and stuff like that back in the day. I mean, we're just flicking things straight over to an SD card, back in the system, and we're ready to go again. So, let's fire this up and see if Jim's control changes make a difference. Make sure the custom joystick is 4-way. Now, Ben, it'll still be 8-way because the way we've done the controls, it will feel quite smooth. You'll know what I mean. You'll know what I mean. Baggers, you ain't in it yet, mate, but you will be. There we go. Yeah, if you guys want to add in revision numbers, that might help actually for the sake of referring back to these videos. I'm doing it the simplest way I know how. I'm just sticking numbers on the end, but to the actual file names. But if you want to add it in on the screen, it can help. So we're looking for revival, survival. 10. Did I rename it in the end, or? Where is he? Did I rename it to 10 or just leave it as... You know what, that save file's disappeared as well. So when it crashed just, like it deleted the revival survival save file. Is this the latest version then? I think so. Yeah. Right. So let's see how different this feels then. Oh, where's Waldo? We've got Jim in every game. You know what, that'd be quite cool. Have you poking your head on. Where's beggars? Ah, that does feel a little bit nicer actually. I can feel the difference straight away. Have it. Die, frog. Oh, damn it. Do. Whoa, we had a bit of a ghost thing going then. I pressed the centre of the D-pad and it jumped. I didn't actually tap C button. It could, to be honest, it could be a short on this joypad. I don't know. Oh, crap. Collision seems a little bit better. What have you actually changed him? Oh. Got it. Something feels smoother. Oh, right, a lot of the checking depends on what direction you're going. See. Something feels... It's hard to pinpoint when you're actually in the thick of the game, but you can tell something's different. Fuck off, ghost. Die, ghost. Get the barrel on the return trip. Oh, get out of it. Ghosts are fast, man. Barrel's dead. Yes. Couple more left. Come on. Come on. Oh, shit. That's right. I got it anyway. Didn't lose a life. That's the important thing. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. It feels smoother. It's weird to say. It definitely feels a little bit more responsive now. If it like I say, closer to the arcade version. It snaps you, but it's not as it's hard to describe. It's one of those things like you can describe it because you've done it. I can describe it because I'm playing it, but it's hard to describe in words to people. But yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's what I think. That's what's key to making it feel like the arcade version. It now suddenly feels a little bit more snappier, like a lot more responsive. I feel like I've got a bit more, like, you know, quick jerk reactions, if you know what I mean. I nearly beat that level then, so now I'm reacting a bit faster. That's better. And you haven't reduced the enemy count or anything, so it's definitely a control thing I can feel the difference on. Right. I'm going to stay down here just to clear the enemies out first. And then I'll go up for the other stuff. Just got to remember which barrel it is that I haven't destroyed. Come on, I'm determined to do this now, I really am. I've got to make a move else I'm going to run out of time. I'll try the top of the screen for a bit. Die. Get that one while they're running around. And that one. Oh, now we've got to work out which ones I haven't killed. Oh, that was stupid. Oh, that was lucky. Oh, run. Die. Yes. Fucking got it. I knew I'd do it in the end. Woo! Right, I'm happy with that. Yeah, and it should think with it. Yes, exactly what I mean. I knew I'd get there in the end. Let's just see if it. I hope it don't crash this time. I want to save that win. But it's on video anyway, so there's no denying that I actually did it that time. And no, people, Jim didn't make it easier. That felt a lot better. You know what? Maybe these live feedbacks actually help. You know what I mean? Maybe these live videos probably help you see a bit more of what I'm seeing when I'm going through them. Yeah, it totally works out, guys. Did you see that crash on the last time I booted it up, though? You might just want to double check on that. Obviously, we found some kind of bug there. By the way, I'm liking this improved animation on the things darting around the screen. Looks pretty cool. So, but anyway, now thanks for that, guys. This is feeling really cool now. I want to keep playing this. I really do. I wish I could do more levels right away, but I can't until obviously I do the work on it now. Guys, my intention tonight was I wanted to sit and do some live like artwork creation. I've got the art files on my computer here. I was all ready to show you what it's like to do the graphics and how an amateur like me just whacks things up in Photoshop, but time's kind of eluded us, if you know what I mean, and it's pushing 9 o'clock and I've already been on for like 2 hours now. The missus will be home shortly, and I've got some things to do for Christmas, so I think I'm going to end the stream there. But thank you all for watching anyway, and I hope this has kind of added to your next excitement a little bit after the announcements yesterday. I'm really loving this. I'm hoping you guys are liking this, and I'm hoping that when we do get this game completed, I hope you keep watching the streams, keep following the progress, and that when it's completed, you all check this game out, because we're going to want to put it out there for you guys to enjoy if you like the look of it. And obviously, for those people who did follow the PC original, this is being completed in conjunction with the PC original, so you're all going to be able to get a copy and play it on your PC if you back that version. And yeah, the next version will be following, and hopefully we can have this done in early in 2019 and have it out not too long after the next finally drops. So yeah, I'll get back on the artwork creation, guys, and we'll keep ploughing on, and then once we've got everything in place, we can see about tweaking the difficulty. But that is playing bang on. That is exactly how I want it to play. I'm really happy with the way that feels. Yeah, that's really cool. So anyway, guys, it's been nice having you on the stream. I'm not going to be doing another stream now before Christmas. I might do something over Christmas. We've got some of the guys round over Christmas for a bit of a gaming night. Maybe we'll do a live stream there. If anybody sat around bored, stuffed up on turkey, pissed off the face on whiskey or whatever else it is you're doing. But I hope you all have a great Christmas and a New Year. And I'll be back with another video shortly after the celebrations. Take it easy, guys.